As you can see here, this series is hosted by Informatics Europe. I'll tell you a little bit more about us in a minute. In collaboration with Again, Cost Action, and I'll also tell you a little bit more in a minute about it. So Informatics Europe, I'm the executive director of this organization. It's a non-for-profit. Our members are computer science institutions, mainly departments or faculties from different European universities, as well as research labs, public and private. So we also have some companies who are members of Informatics Europe. The organization started back in 2005, where there was a meeting hosted by ETH in Zurich. That's actually why we're based in Zurich, by the way. So ETH invited a number of universities, of computer science departments and faculties, mainly head of departments and deans. And in this meeting, it was decided that they needed this association, that the voice of Europe in terms of research and in education should join forces. And that's why Informatics Europe started back in 2005. Today, we have more than 160 institutions. As you can see in the map, we are in most European countries. We're still growing. So if your institution is not yet member of Informatics Europe, please contact us, because the more we are, the stronger our voice is. And the goal of Informatics Europe is exactly that, to create a strong common voice of the research and education community in Europe. You can read that we are over 15,000 researchers. This is a number. It can be 14,000, it can be 20,000. It depends how you measure it, but it's basically an average of the reach that we can have through these 160 institutions. What we do, as I mentioned, we try to create a strong voice which shapes the European informatics agenda in Europe, in areas that are umbrella for informatics, so education, research, and the social impact of informatics. We are promoting knowledge transfer, best practices, collaboration among our members and with society. Maybe important to mention that, I am the executive director. I mentioned it at the beginning, so I am employed by the organization, but we're a very small office, only 4 people. All the rest of the work, it's done by volunteers. Our board is made of scientific volunteers, so they are all informatics researchers. We also have a number of working groups. You see them listed on the screen. Again, they are made up with volunteers who research or are interested in all these areas and are trying to move the informatics agenda, for instance, on ethics in Europe. So it's in these groups, we promote best practice exchange, like this webinar series is an example, but also policy statements and trying to build really to shape the agenda around this topic. So if you're watching this webinar and your institution is a member of Informatics Europe, please be aware that you are very welcome to join one of these working groups and to contribute in shaping really the discipline in Europe, now and in the future. These are some of the services or our main services. We have the European Computer Science Summit. We started with this summit. I mentioned it at the beginning. It's the very first thing that the organization was doing, even before existing as an organization. This year, we celebrated a couple of weeks ago, the 18th summit. And we are already working on the next one, which will be, as you read there, in October in Edinburgh. And it is really the place to network with informatics research and education leaders, and to really discuss about topics about your daily life. It's really about managerial and strategic discussions. So I really welcome you to join us. Also, since last year, we have a workshop which is called WIRE, Women in Research and Education, because it's the working group we had in Informatics Europe, before EUGAIN, which is the cost action. I mentioned these webinars are co-organized with them because Informatics Europe was the initiator of this cost action. It's a network which today has more than 130 people around gender equality topics in informatics. And we're also the grant holder manager. So again, I invite you to join ECSS. We also have leadership courses. We're trying to change the academic culture. We're trying to foster an environment, a place which is easier to work and to success. And early bird registration, it's now open for both courses. We have an online and a residential course, so I invite you to have a look at both of them. All the information is on our webpage. We also do department evaluations. So if your department is thinking on going through an evaluation, please think on Informatics Europe. It's part of your community. Also, as a member, you can share jobs on our platform, and then we have several series of webinars as this one. If you're interested to know more, please visit our webpage or follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or you will see some videos like this nice webinar in YouTube. And please feel free to contact us, to write me an email, to send an email to the admin. We'll be happy to give you further answers. And with this, I stop the introduction about, well, the cost action I already presented before. Maybe to mention that we're now at the end, or we just closed the second grant period. So we're starting the third grant period, and it's so the third year of project, and it's a total of 4. And now I introduce you Ute Schmid. She's part of the EUGAIN network, and also affiliated with an institution which is a member of Informatics Europe. And I'm not taking any more of your time, Ute. The floor is yours. For those who are listening, if you have questions or topics you would like to further discuss, Ute will ask you at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nuria. Welcome the 3 guests I see here. We could kind of have an interactive discussion even, but I'm aware that this is a recording for a talk to hear at YouTube, so I will keep to the talk. Nevertheless, please write into the chat during the talk when you have questions, so maybe I can immediately react to that. I will now share my screen. I have to wait. Yes, now I will share my screen. And you should see it now in full screen.
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Okay, so I will talk about from discovery of own talent to professional confidence, removing barriers and strengthening self-assurance of women in computer science. This is quite a long title, but so since many, many years, my main motivation as a woman in computer science and working there as a women's representative at my department since nearly 20 years now is that for me, it's important that girls and women and everybody else can discover their inclinations and talents, of course, mainly if it's informatics. That's what my mission is about. And very often it's still the case that girls and women, young women, don't have the chance to discover their inclinations and talents there because they have less possibilities in their home, in school, to make experience with computer science, to see what the topics are. And so they often really have not the chance to discover that this is what would make them happy. Furthermore, I think this the underlying problem is that we need to allow for this freedom of choice for a STEM, mainly informatics, degree of study and career, and to overcome structural, social, and personal barriers. There are lots of gatekeepers, be it in the family, in the school, in the society in general, but also personally thinking that you as a woman or girl might not be suitable for informatics, which is obviously not true. What you see above on the image above is 10 women in computer science, starting with Ada Lovelace, we might all know, down to Shafi Goldwasser, who was a winner of the Turing Award. And so in the following, I will shortly introduce you my department, the Faculty of WIAI, very German, which when I translate it is Information Systems and Applied Computer Science at University of Bamberg, which is in Germany, what you definitely already would have guessed from my accent. And the next part of the talk will be encouraging and recruiting females to study informatics, then retaining female students, and then careers of women in informatics. And for all three topics, I always show you some measures we take at University of Bamberg and combine this with some observations or empirical findings. And I will end the talk with lessons learned so far. Yeah, so where are we at University of Bamberg? I became women's representative in spring 2005. I came to University of Bamberg in winter 2004 and was the only women professor in the department. Yeah, it was just a very young department, and so I offered, being the only woman on a permanent position, that I will take the job of the women's representative, because typically it have been doctoral researchers who did this job. And I thought, well, I have a tenured position, so I think it's fair that I should take this job. When I took the job, I noted that there are next to no female students, women students. So I started to think about measures. In 2014, I was really very happy that we the first time had more than 30% of female students at our department, right? In 2018, then, we won the Minerva Award of Informatics Europe, and my colleague Daniela Niklas, the second female professor in computer science at our university, she came to us in 2014, she went with me there. You see her here. This is Daniela. Here, that's me. And we won the Informatics Europe Minerva Informatics Equality Award for our Computer Science 30 strategy, with the goal having more than 30% women at our department, because social sciences tell you that when you have a group which has over 30%, it's no longer perceived as a minority, also by the group members themselves and by the others. So let's look at the current situation at our department. And I'm sorry for all these numbers here, and we will not look at all these numbers, and it's German text here in this table. Also, what I want to show you is the following. We have very typical degrees like a bachelor in software systems science, where we have a percentage of 21% of female students, right? But then we have very special degree opportunities, degree offers, like a Master of Science in Computing in the Humanities, where we have 66% of female students, yeah? So just by the composition of degrees we offer on the bachelor as well on the master level, we gain a larger percentage of female students than the typical computer science department or institute, which might be part of an engineering faculty. Why is this the case? Because for computing in the humanities, for instance, this is a master explicitly offered to students who have a bachelor in a non-STEM subject. So the students we get there are from languages, from history, from social sciences, and there is a high percentage of women. So from the students deciding after a non-STEM bachelor to go in the direction of computer science, we have a sample where there are over 70% of women in, right? So we have this good chance to, attract more women. And the nice thing is that all these students at our faculty are visible as over 30%. And several typical beginners lectures in computer science, like Mathematics 1 or Computer Science 1, are shared by these students. So the Master of Computing in the Humanities typically also attend a typical Bachelor in Computer Science lecture, for the basic courses. And so in these lectures, there also is not the small percentage of women as a minority, but typically around 30%. The average in Germany currently, I checked it on our statistics webpage, is 21.8%. When I just also checked today a little bit about numbers available for other parts of the world, and I saw that in the United States, it's also around 21%. So I did not specifically check other European countries. Typically, the numbers are higher still in Eastern Europe countries, and I think they might be higher in Asian countries. But that's the average in Germany, and we are 10% over this average. So the measures we introduced are manifold to encourage and recruit females, young women, to make them detect their inclination and their talent in computer science. The first measure we introduced in Bamberg had been 2005, which is a workshop series offered at several universities in the area of Franconia, where University of Bamberg is situated. And these are workshops dedicated specifically to girls aged 10 to 14. We all know that research gives strong indication that it's especially important to encourage girls during this time in their development, because typically when you are in puberty, you try to behave prototypical, and so in this, if you haven't interested girls before this time and continue offering them interesting information and choices, this is a time where you often lose girls in STEM subjects. So this is the mood workshops. A year later, we started with Girls' Day, which is a nationwide offer in Germany. I know that's also a nationwide offer in Austria, and I think in several other countries. We introduced a mixed gender offer from age 5 to age 18, Bamberger Informatiktag. And we offer several workshops for small children starting at the age of 5. So typically in these mixed age groups, we keep nevertheless special attention to be gender sensitive, to really encourage girls. But again, observations have shown that at the younger age, for instance, it is not so important as in this sensitive age between 10 to 14 that you have offers specifically for girls. Of course, we look that our tutors are both male and female, and that there are role models for everybody, but the gender-specific offers are Mood and Girls' Day. In 2010, we started to generate content, videos, and web pages about role models like female students at our department, female doctoral researchers at our department, and so on. And in 2012, when the master degree Computing in the Humanities have been introduced, this gave also a big push. 2012, it was in this time here where we got this big push, and definitely this degree offer had a big part, is one of the causes that we have this high percentage. And the last action we introduced is a mentoring offer called Make It, where the first 2 years female students offered mentoring to female high school girls, and after 2 years we offered it for all genders. But the high school students have the choice whether they want to be mentored by a female or a male student. And I'm very sorry that I so often talk about binary gender. The reason is that we currently have nearly non-binary persons at our department, but of course we are watchful to not ignore other genders here. Okay, so with all these measures, we ask ourselves always, which actions are effective and what are the effects of our actions? So I'm rather proud that from the beginning, starting in 2005, we rigorously, empirically evaluated each of these measures with questionnaires, and we tried to streamline or adapt our offers to the requirements and the feedback we got from our empirical data. So let's give a closer look at several of our measures. Here is are some images illustrating what we do with younger children in kindergarten and primary school. And there we try to have a good balance between working in the real world, in analog settings, and combine it with working in with digital media. And what we try to achieve with this mixture, with this blend of hands-on work with real-world material and working on tablets or computers, is to help the children to acquire a basic conceptual understanding about, for instance, what is binary representation. Here, children work on this topic using pixels to construct images. Then, of course, we show them that images on there they draw or photograph with digital media consist of such pixels. So we relate the practical experience in the real world with the digital world, and they also learn about algorithms by kind of bodily experiencing, playing them out and programming them, for instance, with Scratch Junior, or for the children starting at age level 8, also with Scratch. Yeah, we did an empirical evaluation when we introduced our computer science experimenters kit, this mixture of real world and digital modules, when we offered this in a kindergarten in elementary school. And I don't want to go into the details here. We had several concepts about what would be the effects of our computer science kit. And we measured the different aspects with different empirical tools. And of course, when you work with children in this age, you don't want to make some kind of individual tests. And children at this age typically also cannot read and write. They are aged 4 to 6 in this group. So what, for instance, we did was to ask them before our workshop whether they would be interested, in becoming a computer scientist later on, right? So typically children at this age have already ideas about occupations, which is fire person, or police, working at police, or becoming a doctor or a teacher, right? Or an astronaut maybe. But typically a child will not say, I want to become a computer scientist, right? But so we asked them at the beginning, before we introduced our kit, and asked who could imagine to become a computer scientist. And you see the children were rather undecided. Some on the left, no, I don't want, definitely not. Some in the middle, some to the right. After the workshop, you see that most children move to the right, and there is this one girl who definitely wanted to become a ballerina, and of course she had lots of fun at the workshop, for the whole week. And she was very she was as good as everybody in the tasks, but she was very consistent and said, I like this, but I still want to become a ballerina, which is also completely okay, right? So the observations we had with different measures for young children are that interestingly, there are gender-specific strategies. I don't know whether somebody in the audience has experience with this young age group, but I was really astonished. Yeah, when you give girls and boys age 8 to 9 in 3rd grade the task, you can think about any thing you want to do in Scratch. Of course, we give examples first, right, and introduce Scratch. Very typically, girls program interactive stories and boys program games. Yeah, and when you program a game, you typically want to have a score. So the boys ask about, how can I have a score? How can I record this? And they therefore use variables. In the interactive stories, typically there is no need for variables. So what we started to do there very unobtrusively, like kind of proposed, maybe you want to count how often the witch meets the dragon or something, right? To give the girls the chance also to use variables. Furthermore, girls typically work very planful. They think about what they want to program, make a plan, and when they have a problem, they ask. Boys explore. Yeah, so this sounds very, very stereotype. And of course, there are individual girls and individual boys who don't fall in this pattern. But this is what we mostly observe. Yeah, what we also observe is that mostly girls, when you do this in pairs, programming in pairs, girls and boys don't want to mix. Yeah. So typically, when children do not know each other, especially, it would be not a good idea to couple a girl and a boy here. Of course, you always ask, yeah, and be sensitive, yeah, and see when somebody is not comfortable with that. Okay, so now I see I spent lots of time for this youngest age group. We proceed to the older girls, 10 to 14. And there I only want to point out that before the workshops, it's always hands-on, it's always programming, yeah, not some lecture about how interesting it is to be a computer scientist. Before the program, lots of girls couldn't imagine to study or work in computer science later on. And after the workshops, these numbers grew. So it helps to get a better impression about what computer science is about and whether this would be an option later on. Yeah. I think that specific programs for girls are necessary because we, for some years, offered exactly the same workshops for these girls-only programs and the mixed programs. We get 50 girls every year for this girls-only program, but only 12 to 20% when it's open to everybody. So as long as this is the case, I think offers for girls are still necessary and important. The mentoring for the older high school students is now in its 6th year. And there we only take on about 8 to 15 high school students to be mentored by students from our department. And there we did a study where we wanted to empirically assess how the mentoring functions we tried to realize, how they affect beliefs, attitudes, intentions, behaviors we could not measure because we don't track these girls, whether they will really study computer science in some years. Yeah, it's stopped at the intention. Whether and how our measures, our program has an effect on these constructs here. Okay. So over the years, we started from 2011 on to have a statistic where we ask all our students in the first two semesters whether they participated at some of our programs or other STEM-like programs somewhere else. And over the years, 53 of our students were students who said, yes, I participated at Bamberg programs before. And so I will not go, because the numbers are so small, I will not differentiate here between male and female students. And you see that 163 had participated at some STEM measures somewhere at other universities, for instance, before that. So I think this shows that it's still an important course that you offer workshops for high school students, pupils at younger age, to recruit and attract them to computer science. Okay, so now we have the female students at our department, but are they successful? Do they feel appreciated? What are their career aspirations? We try to also offer support to our female students by offering mentoring and networking, like joint excursions. We have a seminar course, Gender Aspects of Computer Science, every summer. And there, I really love, this is one of my favorite seminar courses I give, I have to say. And the interesting things there is that we have about half male and female students there, yeah. Typically there are some students who say, well, I selected this seminar because there was no place in another seminar. Most are motivated by really selecting this, but some give that as a reason, yeah, very honest. And interestingly, at the end of the seminar, typically everybody agrees that this was very, very helpful to reflect, yeah, the role of gender in computer science, yeah. And yeah, it also holds for me because the students bring in completely new topics, yeah, from their own background, questions of their own. And so over the last years, we had more AI topics. So my background is also AI. I'm a professor in artificial intelligence, cognitive systems. And so we look, for instance, about why have Siri, Alexa, and so on typically female voices? And we did a very nice study, which we even got published, about gender bias in machine translation. So lots of different topics. We also had some coaching offers where we currently have no further funding, but this was something students really appreciated, especially questions at the end of the master study, when there are questions, what do I want? Maybe do I plan to go for a doctoral thesis, and so on. When you look at the motivations, the prerequisites males and females bring with them when they start to study, we did this in 1 year, in 2019, more systematic. Therefore, I keep these numbers here. What you see is that, for instance, in AI is applied informatics and not artificial intelligence here, and WI is business informatics. What you see here is that female students had a significantly better grade in mathematics at the end of high school than male students, yeah. sorry, here, I was at the graph at the bottom shows you this. The female students had a 1.6 Abitur, high school degree in mathematics. The average of the male students was 2.3. And in general, the girls also have been better. And this degree here, 1.6, is high over the average in Bavaria. Yeah. So the girls deciding to study computer science are so much better in mathematics than the average, yeah, which also shows that you go against the stereotype only if you are rather sure, very sure, yeah, that you have the background to do this, yeah. And typically, female students tend a little bit more to say, I decided on computer science because I have talent. And they also said, I decided for computer science because it's of interest. And here it's other motives like making a career, earning good money. I don't want to go in the details here. The other 2 points have been more important for me. Interestingly now, when you ask students at higher semesters, how successful do you think you are in your study compared to the other students? The females kind of underestimate here. Yeah. So at the beginning, I became really worried, and I asked the colleague who does the major computer science exam for this term to check whether the female students indeed have lower grades than or worse grades than the males. And this is definitely not the case. The grades have been even better, right? But nevertheless, they underestimate. So here, obviously, we have something to do. Yeah, we have to be sensitive that the lecturers and the teaching assistants, yeah, kind of explicitly give feedback to the female students that they are doing very good. Yeah. Because obviously the self-assessment is not so reliable. Yeah. Yeah, so I will skip lots of other things. We did self-assessment with image. Yeah, I will skip that and come to a project we did for 3 years called alumni tracking, where we tried not only to look at our students, but also at alumni of our degrees, to look at their success in the occupation and how satisfied they are with their career and with their life in general. So I'm sorry for the German items here. I want to point out one interesting fact. So women more than men are interested not only in work, but also in enjoying life and work-life balance, family life balance, yeah? So here females have higher values. Being interested in having a career as managing other people, being making a career where you have a responsible position, here the males have been more interested. Interestingly, when you then later on ask the same women and men how content, how satisfied they are with their work, obviously women who have no responsible, interesting work or occupation are significantly less content than women who have a responsible position. Yeah. And so the terrible thing here is, in my opinion, that, yeah, here women say, I want to have more free time. I'm not so interested in a career, but when they don't go for a career, they are not content. The men who say, the fewer men who say, I'm not interested in a career, I want a good work-life balance, they are completely happy when they have not a career, but just some occupation, right? So they made a choice, right? And then they are content, but women are not. So, so what we see here again is how important mentoring at the end of the study, and maybe even after, at the beginning of work, is for women, to encourage them to say, yes, I can have a career, and nevertheless, this might be possible with a family. Awesome, right? Okay, so I'm coming nearly to the end. My colleague Daniela Niklas was in Hamburg 2 weeks ago and presented at the Wire UGAIN workshop Nuria already talked about. And the European network, the UGAIN network, is something really, really great and valuable, I think. I learned a lot, even if we had mostly virtual meetings, unfortunately, because we started during COVID-19. And there you see the different working groups from school to university. I have to say, I am rather content with the measures we have in Bamberg there. From bachelor and master to PhD, I'm not so content yet. And I have lots of open questions here. From PhD to professor, I think is currently even more of a challenge still. And yeah, cooperation with industry and society is also very, very important. That we not only look at the academia, but also at other groups of society. And of course, there is strategy and dissemination. So lessons learned: start early and keep going. I think that's the most important thing when we want to have more women in computer science. And it's really very helpful when you build up a network with active teachers, which we have built up over the years. What we also see is that having more females, more women at the department has positive effects for everybody. And so, for instance, students become more aware about possible gender biases, about different interests, and so on. And very luckily, at the University of Bamberg, we see that this is really a mission for the whole faculty. And this is very, very helpful. So thanks to a big, big team. And I stop here and hope that I get some interesting questions.
Yes, Nuria, we see some questions from the chat. Tanya, or would you like to ask your question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Ute, I have a question. What is your forecast for the future, you think? What do you think will be the gender distribution within the next 5 years?
That's not an easy question, of course, looking in the future. I think it is also different when we look Germany, or let's say the world, or Europe. I think there might be slightly different developments. In general, I'm optimistic that the numbers will at least not decrease, hopefully slightly increase. But I suspect a little bit that we are with, let's say, yeah, so we 21, I think we can still increase, maybe even up to 30, yeah. But I'm a little bit pessimistic that it will go higher, but maybe this is not pessimistic. I think distributions of what you find interested are not really balanced between gender, right? So I think the important thing is that every person who is interested in a specific subject should have the chance to detect that that them are interested, right? And I think this is the big challenge. So I'm relatively optimistic for students. I'm not as optimistic for PhDs and even less for careers in industry and professors. So I don't know what your experience is. I see that still when you look at the leading figures in women in tech companies and female professors, very often they don't have children, right? And so please don't get me wrong. I don't think that getting children is something really important, that everybody should have children. Don't get me wrong here, right? But I think very often women are rather defensive there. And when they, let's say, are at the end of 20, beginning of 30, where you think about university career or career in industry, women tend to say, well, but I also want family. There are no role models, and they just decide without that being necessary. When children or family are more important a little bit, they go out of the field. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges we have to address without having this women should have children thing, which would be really dangerous and not what we want, right? But what we want to, the message we should give is, when you want to have a family, you can do this. It's hard, okay, but you can do this, yeah? When you want to become a professor or have a career in industry, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really hard because I think in your 30s you have to decide whether you want to have family or a career.
I think you can have both.
Yes,
it's hard. It's really hard, but you can. Yeah.
And Magali, yes.
Yeah.
Hello. If I can just comment on what you said, I think also one of the problem is that when couples, heterosexual couples have children, there are usually a higher weight on the mother than on the father. Like it's way more common for the mother to sacrifice her career than the father. And there are men who are professors and have children. It shouldn't be that much more of a difficulty for women to have children and be for professors. So maybe gender equality in couples might be a way to make it easier for women in achieving the career goals they want. But I also had a question. So you said that when a group reaches 30% of the population, it's not perceived as a minority anymore. And so do you think that, or did you study that the fact of having 30%, does it help? Is it like a threshold that helps reaching the 50% faster? Because if you don't perceive that you're the minority group in that field, you might be more willing to think it might be for you. And I'm wondering if there's a threshold effect between like going from 30 to 50 being easier than going from like 0 to 10, for example.
Yeah, very good question. And I have no empirical answer for you there. When you look at our department, when we were over 30%, we had some years where we had 35 around, I think, but not so much higher, right? I think it's a challenge to kind of transport this distribution of gender for high school students who decide to go to university and select, for instance, a university. So because they would kind of, when you choose a university, I think you are not so aware about gender distribution, yeah, and maybe a little bit is maybe kind of information from one student generation to others. There might be a spreading of information, but I think it's not so easy.
Yeah, and probably for the threshold effect, like I was talking about, we wouldn't need 30% in one university, but 30% in the general representation of women in the field, because everything we see and hear is still that women are minorities.
Right, exactly. Yeah, good point. Yeah. And to your remark before, when we had this questionnaire about our alumni, yeah, it's exactly what the women with children said in the questionnaire. When you asked what would be the biggest help for women with children to make a career, it was, of course, also the kindergarten place at the company, but the most strong effect we had for that my partner can also reduce time, yeah. And this is also still, I think, a task we have as a society, because when a man at his company says, I want to reduce, not the obligatory in Germany, you can have this minimum of 2 months being at home, which is completely accepted, yeah. But if some man would say, I want for the next 5 years, yeah, to go to a 60% position, yeah, might be difficult. And I think there is lots of work to do.
Yeah. Marta.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Sorry, in my office, the light is off. Thank you. It's been really interesting. I'm based in the UK, and my question is somewhat related. It's kind of like, do you have any advice around how to avoid this not becoming a tick box exercise? Because sometimes I feel like some people consider this of like, oh yeah, we just need to increase the representation of women in certain at certain levels, and we'll do the minimum standard, but it's not really changing the culture. And in the UK, we have shared parental leave as a kind of government policy that dads can take or other partners can take, and basically whatever the mother has as maternity leave can be split between the two partners however they decide. But it's been a complete failure as a policy. It's not been picked up because women just tend to stay at home for various reasons. And so it's like, this is one of the things that I'm struggling with, is like, how do we make sure that we're changing the culture from different points of view? And if you had any advice, that would be, I'd be interested.
Oh, yeah, this is such a hard problem. So, yeah, when I look at students or young PhDs we have with children, which is, of course, not a big number, yeah, but there I see much more gender balance than I saw at my generation, yeah. So I'm kind of hoping that the next generations will be more and more open to a fair distribution of family work. But it's a hope, yeah. And I think we also, at least in Germany, hear that the current generation also, when they apply for jobs, are rather clear that they want to have a work-life balance, right? In contrast to my boomer generation, our boomer generation, of course, work is above everything, right? And so hopefully it will change over the generations. And you also see this when you look at companies who try to be social aware. It's of course again a minority. When you look at the big players, it's more like ethics washing often, right? Let's hope that the next generation will be more successful.
Thanks. Yeah,
I have only to offer hope. I'm sorry.
Yeah, hopefully. I have a 2-year-old, so I'm doing my best to raise him to be.
Very good.
So I just have a question, which is probably the last one. We've mentioned, around this problematic, which I think it's not only for informatics, but in general, and as you say, it's a society issue that hopefully gets better with the generations. But you've mentioned the mentoring to high school girls, but do you have also some kind of mentoring for your PhD student or for your master students, exactly showing what you're saying, that maybe there are not many professors which are women, but there are some, and some even have family. And same thing with industry. I think there are still leaders in all sectors, and I'm sure in informatics as well, who do have family and have success. Because I think part of the as women, I think we have to assume as well our own responsibility. And, when you say, my husband should do this or that, your husband is the person that you choose to marry or your partner. So I think you should have this conversation. And I understand that, maybe it's not easy to go to 60% in all countries on the male. It's not well perceived, but maybe 80%, or at least sharing the task. So I think it's also a lot of brainwashing our own women brain before blaming others that they are not doing it. I don't know, what's your perspective? And again, if you do have some mentoring.
So I was not, hopefully I didn't blame anybody. I just know that currently it's hard at most companies when a man goes to 60% or something of work, because it's kind of attributed. With the women, of course, it's the same. It's kind of attributed that this person is not so enthusiastic about the work, right? With the mentoring, we kind of offered a little bit half-heartedly, maybe, mentoring for our PhDs, female PhDs. And this was not something, appreciated so much. But maybe the problem was that when we offered this, we started as a really very small faculty, and so we had only very few female PhDs, women PhDs, and so maybe we could now try it again, And I think it's also maybe not so easy to have the mentoring with the female professors of the same department, So I am since years now a mentor in PhD mentoring programs at other universities, and typically I'm a mentor for one female PhD student for 1 year, and I did this the last 4 years, and this is very, very nice. And we have a program like this also, but there I think up to now only one student of our department participated. So
Thank you very much. The good
Thank
part,
you.
I mean, there is a lot to do, but the good part is to see that the progress that you have reached, that it takes time. For me, it's amazing to see that it took nearly 10 years to see the first improvement, but then, you know, the progress has been really steep. So I congratulate you once again. You already won our award, but congratulations again, and keep working.
Yeah,
the rest
will
for
do.
the audience.
Yeah. And thanks for the invitation, and thanks for the discussion and the questions. And if you are interested, we write an email or find me on LinkedIn, or join UGAIN if you not already joined.
Perfect. So we thank all of you, and yeah, we look forward to see you on our next webinar, which is will be the last one of this year. You have all the details in our webpage in Informatics Europe, and yeah, as Ute just said, feel free to join both UGAIN and Informatics Europe. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.